World Regions Geography, Sub-Saharan Africa, Part 2. We're continuing water resources and dams. So the soils, as I said earlier, mentioned earlier, are not very fertile. A lot of times you think that they would be, but when we learn a little bit about tropical soils rely on the constant dropping of leaves. So you have a lot of plants that grow there. And that would, people would think, oh, the soil's really rich, but it's not. It's a very top layer, and it's all this decaying material that provides all of this rich soil to grow on. But as soon as you clear cut, like in other words, you go in and you clear out this tropical forest, it's what's going on in Brazil. It's also happening in areas of sub-Saharan Africa. You clear out that, then that layer of fertility, maybe top 6 inches, 3 to 6 inches of soil, quickly disappears, and then desertification begins to happen. So you begin to have these emergence of desert landscapes where it's cleared. And part of it is the way they use the land, but the biggest part of it has to do with the nature of tropical soils in general. The other part about Africa that a lot of people may not realize, there's a tremendous amount of mineral resources, vast reserves. This region here, a lot of oil here in Angola, that's Nigeria, this Angola. A lot of mining goes on down here, not only for diamonds and gold, but lots of other strategically important minerals, lithium, things like that. So there's a lot of assets in Africa, and there's a lot of debt. Gold is produced down this region, up in this region, but there is a lot of debt in Africa, and that has to do a lot to do with the trade imbalance. Geographies of indulgence, desire, and addiction. So diamonds, 65% of the world's diamonds originate in Africa. This you see over here, this Kimberley process certificate. This is to try to ensure that you don't have militant groups seizing diamond mines and producing conflict diamonds. That's what's going on in Sierra Leone and Liberia. They seize them, they sell the diamonds on the world market in order to obtain money to buy weapons to continue to fight their wars. And so they've come up with this process, the Kimberley process, which just basically certifies that these are diamonds obtained through normal channels. De Beers is the company that controls most of the diamonds in the world and controls the diamond market. It was a British and Dutch company from early or late 19th century. Ecology, land, and environmental management. So there's a lot of different ecosystems. We have the rainforests, this region through here. You have deserts, this region along here, and also right in this region right here. And you have Madagascar, and Madagascar is this island. Now Madagascar is a unique ecosystem, so there's a lot of animals, much like Australia. It's been isolated because the winds tend to blow this way, so that people didn't come out there a lot. So it's been fairly isolated, so a lot of species developed and changed in Madagascar, and they're not like, they may be related to species on the mainland, but they're entirely different. They're unique to Madagascar. And then you have the problem of deforestation, particularly through this region, some of these regions in here. As they clear cut and they don't manage the land, you begin to lose the forest, and then the land quickly deteriorates, and then you end up with a situation where where you begin this desertification process. Diseases and pests. Diseases and pests play a major part in Africa. A lot of times we hear about some of the major diseases, like the Zika virus comes out of Africa. Malaria, prevalent in Africa, kills a lot of people. Cystiomyces, this is a internal disease. It's in your stomach and lower intestine, and you get worms in there. The belly blows up. They get diarrhea. It's very deadly. River blindness is a worm that you find in the rivers and waters in Africa, where the water's warm. It burrows into the eye and then dies, and then it causes blindness. World Health Organization, one of the major areas in the world where they work to try to control different types of diseases. I mean, Ebola, HIV. This region, because of the tropical warm weather, these diseases can grow and flourish, and more importantly, the things that spread them. Bats, in this case, you have tsetse flies, you have little worms, you have all of these diseases carried by insects. The tsetse fly causes a disease called sleeping sickness, where people basically just have trouble staying awake. Ecology, land, and environmental management continued. So land use and agriculture. Less than 30% of the soils are good for cultivation. So what does that really mean? That means that of that large continent, less than 30% of it are actually good for growing crops. The rest of it, we do some intercropping. They do slash and burn, shifting agriculture. So this is what's going on with this lady. She's slash and burning, so she's clearing out underneath these trees. She's going to burn this. This is actually going to provide some nitrogen into the soil. They'll grow 1 or 2, 3 crops, maybe 4, and then they'll have to move to another area and clear it. And bush fallow, which is basically a similar, except they just clear out an area, they grow some crops a couple of years, then they move to another area. They're not necessarily burning it in those. Intercropping is this process right here. You plant more than one type of crop because they use different nutrients out of the soil, and then you can raise them and have better crops than if you tried to plant just one type of crop. Transhumanance, that is the process, what you see right here. They're moving their cattle from one area to another. So it's a form of pastoralism where you're herding animals, but you move them from in the winter. This is where there's plenty of water. Heavy rains come, you may move them a little bit north to where there's still good water and pasture, but you don't have the heavy rain. And then in the summer, when that northern area dries out, they move back to the south. Conservation, rich biodiversity, constant problem. I think the white rhino has just about been eradicated in Africa. It's been poached into non-existent. Asian buyers are only interested in the horns. That's all they take. They kill the animal, cut the horn off, and go. Only 5% of the area is protected, and they don't have enough resources to really do it. Bush meat is monkey meat that is hunted and killed and used for human food. And the Greenbelt movement is actually a group of women in Africa who are trying to conserve areas for various species to ensure that there will be biodiversity in the future. Biodiversity is so important for any region, whether it's our country, South America, Asia, it doesn't matter where it is. Biodiversity is so important because each species fills a niche. And when you remove a species, that creates an open niche, which something will rise into there. Often it's an invasive species, which causes further decline and may have eliminate other native species and can have long-term negative impacts on a region. The history, economy, and territory historical legacies and landscapes. So Africa is considered the cradle of humankind. There's been multiple migrations out of Africa, starting back about 2 million years ago. They began to migrate out of Africa up through the area through the Nile and into the Middle East and Europe and Asia and over into different parts of Asia, Sub-Saharan or the subcontinent in Asia, and over eventually to Australia. Good book, Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Seals. Interesting read if you'd like to read something about it. It's an easy read. Early history, various Aksum, Western African Empire, Zanzibar. These are all very powerful, very wealthy trading empires, often located in different parts of Africa. A lot of times we tend to think of Africa as maybe the colonial picture of darkest Africa, everybody running around in a jungle, no civilizations, and that's not at all the case. There were civilizations that were trading to Timbuktu. You've probably heard of that term. Well, Timbuktu was a major trading city in West Africa, where Mali is, and traded in gold and slaves and ivory with the Middle East for centuries. Was only displaced when the Portuguese sailed down the west coast of Africa in the 15th, 16th century. So there's been a lot of powerful history, a lot of powerful empires in Africa that we may not be aware of, but I think you have to respect the cultural integrity and the unique cultural traditions of the peoples in various parts of Africa. So European settlement began really with some trading cities along this west coast of Africa. That developed in the slave trade, first going into Europe, and then with the discovery of North and South America, of the Americas and the Caribbean, you began to have the triangular trade, which was shipping finished goods here, selling there, buying slaves, shipping them over here to sugar plantations, and then that sugar was shipped to Europe. So you have the slave trade. This region right through here was where most of the slaves in the Americas came from, though if you were in Brazil, many came from Angola and Mozambique, this region right over here, so the two Portuguese colonies. Exploration, the discovery of quinine, which is used to fight malaria, made it possible to explore this. And then you have Dr. Livingstone and Stanley in the 19th century exploring this, searching for the Nile, the headwaters of the